We are entrepreneurial. I think the quality of being an entrepreneur is something that can be applied to anybody. Everybody in their own little box, can behave in an entrepreneurial fashion. With someone who takes risks, someone who wants to create. Does that mean you can all run off and start your own businesses? Absolutely not. But you can all behave in a way that grows you as an individual.
Matt Haycox, a resilient entrepreneur whose journey embodies the essence of perseverance and the power of redemption. From overcoming bankruptcy in his early 20s to building a financial empire that has impacted business across the UK. Matt has not only displayed a keen business acumen, but also a remarkable commitment to helping others navigate the turbulent waters of entrepreneurship. How did you pass this phase from your life? That's a tough one.
When I get asked about how did I overcome bankruptcy, for me it was just...
Welcome back, Alphas, to a new inspiring episode of the Alpha Talks podcast. Today in the studio, I've got a very special Alpha for you today, Matt Haycox, a resilient entrepreneur whose journey embodies the essence of perseverance and the power of redemption. A man who's not only weathered the storm, but emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Without further ado, let's dive into the compelling narratives of Matt Haycox. Matt, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
I feel like I've got a lot to live up to.
Wow. You deserve it, man. So, Matt, let's say somebody, when we publish the episode, he sees the thumbnail, he sees the title. So I think it's interesting. What can we guarantee that they will gain by giving us their time and watching the episode?
So I always say that my life is a life of mistakes, and that anyone listening to me can learn from my mistakes without having to make them themselves. I think you never really learn anything until you make a mistake.
True.
Or until something goes wrong. I think, when things go right, well, they've gone right, but you don't really know why they've gone right. Whereas when things go wrong, you get to kind of sit back and dissect and look at the problem.
100%.
And I like to say I've kind of spent 35 plus years fucking up.
Yeah,
true. Swear on here.
It's coming.
But,
it's coming.
And I've done it, so you don't have to. You can you can learn through my eyes.
Love that. Did you write a book or not?
You know what? I haven't. I've started multiple times and never quite got there. I've got probably 3 or 4 unfinished
you have to do it.
Yeah,
you have to do it. So let's start off. Can you tell us who's Matt from your perspective, in a nutshell, for our audience?
You want the background?
Yeah, a quick one. I'll get deep.
I'll give it as quick as I can.
Yeah.
I always, whenever I do these podcasts, I always think I should be able to get so much quicker at telling it, but I still haven't found a quick way. So my early years, as in, look, I go back to 8, 9, 10 years old. Yeah. I can remember wanting to be an entrepreneur all my life, wanting to be a business owner. Really just because I wanted to make money. I didn't particularly know anything about business. I didn't know what business I wanted to be in, but I came from an era where if you wanted to make big money, the perception was the only way to do it was to own your own business. My dad also owned his own business, so I guess being around him...
True. You worked with him, correct?
Much later on, bits and pieces. My dad and I were very, very different. He was very successful in his business in his time, but we have very different ways of doing things, and I wouldn't. We don't gel the best.
It's the majority of people like this, because the same with my father. Like, he's a successful man, I'm a successful man, but we're both different, and I believe the same. Yeah.
So I knew I wanted to be in business. I spent my teenage years trying everything possible, buying and selling at the market, trying to squat on web domains in the mid 90s. Nothing worked, and I left school at 18. Managed to convince my parents to allow me not to go to university, because that was their dream. Back in the late 90s, if you didn't go to university, you were basically written off as far as the corporate world was concerned. And I think I'd been to private school, so again, for a parent who'd put their kid through private school, the perception was, if you then didn't go to university, it was like, well, what have I wasted the money going to the private school for? So it was a big deal to not go to uni. And I started to work in a family business. It was a business my dad had invested in, one that made uniforms for security guards, for bus drivers, and it was failing. And ultimately, I was able to get involved and have a hand in basically running and turning that business around. And I always say that I had every possible problem thrown at me. Well, I always used to say every possible problem until I then went on to the next business and found out there was
another problem.
Many more problems.
True.
But in that particular industry, had hundreds and hundreds of issues that a 50, 60, 70-year-old business owner would never get to experience, never mind someone at 18, 19, 20.
True.
So it was an unbelievable learning experience. finance. I had to learn sales, purchasing, marketing, finance, operations, absolutely everything.
A quick note, I find this incredibly intriguing. On the back end of our YouTube channel, it says around 75% of you who watch this channel frequently over the lifetime of this channel haven't yet hit the subscribe button. I just wanted to ask you for a favor. It helps this channel so much if you choose to just subscribe. It helps us invite guests that give you great value. It helps us scale the production and as well makes this show bigger and bigger for you. And if you enjoyed the previous episodes and you're currently enjoying this episode, could you please hit the subscribe button? I love your support. It's incredible to see all your comments and engagement, and we are just starting. Thank you so much, and I will repay this gesture by making sure that everything we do on this show makes it bigger, and better. I'm committed to do this promise. Do we have a deal? Thank you so much for subscribing. It means the world to me. A lot of people working in family business, and they have a lot of challenges, and I believe you had it. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And how did you overcome it?
So this was actually, it wasn't my family's business. This was somebody else's family business. But it does kind of answer that question that you've asked, because this was a business that had been a generational family business. And at the point that my father got involved, they just got into bankruptcy, and they needed an investor to take them out of bankruptcy and, in theory, take their good business that had just had some cash flow problems onto the next level. When my dad got involved and I started to work there at the same time, we started to uncover the depths of mess in there. And I guess one of the main things that seems to happen in family businesses, the wrong people get put in the wrong positions, just because they're a family. And I think looking back into it, it's been so long since I've never been asked this question. It's been so long since I've actually looked back, and I've never really experienced it since. But I remember very much there, literally 3 generations of family, where none of the people in the roles, you would not have hired any of them to do that role. Listen, to be fair, I'm not saying they were all terrible. Some were terrible.
They're not fitting 100%.
Some were okay, but none of them, if you had your choice of who do I go and hire, you would never have hired any of those people. Then all the problems that go on at home come into work, and so much politics and so much BS. And I think you're one of the the biggest problems in family business is running them more like a family and less like a business.
True.
I think family businesses have the pros and cons. The positive is you get to work with people who, in theory, who should be very trustworthy, who should be very loyal, which is excellent. But then that's often countered by the fact that they're not the best people for the job, and so you've got to balance. You've got to strike that balance.
What about working with your father? I will move afterwards, but how is it? Because a lot of people now even asking me, because I have the same kind of background. Where is the turning point that you said, guys, we cannot work together?
So, when I first started in that business, I didn't actually have to work with him. My dad had invested in the business. He'd also just sold his own business, and he was retired. So he was very much a silent investor in this business, and he kind of gave me the reins to go and do whatever. So for a good period of time, we didn't actually kind of work together. Yes, he owned a business. Yes, I'd go home and tell him what was going on, but we never really had to work together. Then there became a point where he did start to become involved. And in hindsight, it was probably best he did become involved then, because that he had a different skill set for certain things than I had a skill set for certain things. But when you say when did it become a problem? Probably from day one. And I'm sure my dad will answer the question in the same way. I mean, we've worked together over our lives in 2 or 3 different times, and never has it really gone well. I mean, there's never been blazing rows and big problems, because it's never gone on for long enough. Because I think we've both identified very early on that
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. We operate in. We both want to be. We both want to be number one. We both want to be in control.
The alphas, true.
And we both operate in very, very different ways. So yeah.
You went into bankruptcy, and you have a lovely saying or analogy for bankruptcy, which is the cancer and death. So I want you to say this.
So the bankruptcy came quite a bit after this, and we're sure we'll pick up on that bit of the story. But yeah, so what I always say that when people talk about bankruptcy, that it's something that they're always very scared of. That's normally probably because no one's ever experienced it. Yes, you might know someone who has experienced it, but it's more of those things that in your life you haven't experienced ever, or hopefully even if you do it once, it'll never happen again. And people put it off because they think, well, if I go bankrupt, then I'm going to, my life's going to be ruined. I'm never going to be able to borrow money again. People are never going to deal with me again. But my cancer analogy is that I say, when somebody has cancer, they haven't, if they're terminal with that cancer, they've not just been going on for a few days with this. They've probably had months, if not years, of suffering of a horrible situation. They've been ill, they've been having chemotherapy, radiotherapy, whatever, and they're hanging on with their last breath.
True.
And if they die, it's probably a blessing for them. It's the end to those problems. And I think people need to look at bankruptcy in the same way, that when people go, well, I don't want to go bankrupt because my credit's going to be bad. Listen, your credit's already shot to shit because, at the point of being about to go bankrupt, you've already been suffering months, if not years, of red letters, of stress, of unpaid suppliers, and everybody else knows about your problems as well anyway. So if anything, bankruptcy is a blessing. Now, I always say I don't want to trivialize it either, because obviously, I would rather have not gone bankrupt. I'm sure most other people would rather have not gone bankrupt. But when you're in a position and there is no way out of it, I think the worst thing people can do is kid themselves, delude themselves, and drag it on and on and on and on. Because I guess the longer you drag it on for, the worse the situation is during that time. And ultimately, you can't start your new life until you finish your old life.
What was that type of business that?
The business that went bankrupt for me. So when I left the family clothing business, I started in leisure. My first business that was a strip club, and it was very successful for me from the outset. And this was early 2000s. It was very easy to borrow money, and I spent the next 5 or 6 years borrowing a lot of money
and expanding, right?
Expanding the strip clubs, expanding normal bars, normal clubs, restaurants, shops, hotels, property. I had a very big 8-figure business at that point, but it was all built on debt, just sand and debt. So when the credit crunch, the 2008 financial crisis started, the first chinks in the armor appeared, and the whole thing fell down. So when you say what business was it, to me it was everything. It was everything. I mean, I couldn't really tell you which one started it, because everything was so mixed together. But when one went, everything went. And literally, I probably started to get, and this is where we talk about the delusion really, because I probably identified the problem in June of 2008. And then from June to September, so only 2 months really, everything went from what looked amazing to bankrupt almost overnight. But if I now look back and I'm honest with myself, the problems didn't start in June. The problems started 3 years earlier, 2 years earlier, and I'd just been able to dodge and
you didn't want to believe what's happening.
Exactly.
But tell me, how did you pass this phase from your life?
So
that's a tough one.
So I always say that when I get asked about how did I overcome bankruptcy, what can I tell other people who were in the similar situation, I always almost feel bad that I haven't got this motivating general speech of what you need to do. But because for me it was just the simple fact of, okay, I'd gone bankrupt, and I'm now sat at home with no money, with no businesses, with no income. But I had a wife and a 1-year-old baby, and I needed to put food on the table and
make it happen
and pay the rent. So I could sit at home and I could watch shit TV for the rest of my life and cry about how it's everybody else's fault, or I could just go back to work the next day and try and put one foot in front of the problem, or one foot in front of the other, and start
make it happen.
And start the journey. And listen, again, I'm not saying it was easy. Yes, there was
tough like hell.
A blow to my ego. Last week I'm driving Ferraris and Bentleys. This week I'm in an Uber. But it is what it is. But the thing for me that's very important to take away from it, people always say, oh, when you went bankrupt, you'd lost everything. And I say I hadn't actually lost anything other than my money.
True.
And that's the big thing.
The same Matt.
Because and if anything, the same Matt with 28 years of knowledge at that point, and if anything, a new Matt with 28 years plus a new bit of knowledge.
True.
Because I've just now experienced something that most other people don't get to experience. And that's why I guess the old expression of the first million's the hardest.
Yes.
It's because you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the skills to do it. So yes, obviously I didn't want to go bankrupt, but when I did and I started to make my money again, I made it a lot quicker the second time round than I made it because I had all the contacts, I had all the experience,
the skills. What made you change from a uniform business going to leisure? What struck you?
Well, the uniform business was never my business. I mean, that was, you know, I never wanted to be in that business. It was just a business my dad had got involved with, and I didn't want to go to university, so I had the opportunity to work in it.
Yeah.
And then the leisure business, again, you know, I probably never had any great plan to be in leisure, other than the fact that I guess as a young guy, you think if I own bars, I meet girls,
cool,
I meet girls and make money. So it wasn't really any more thought.
It wasn't
out
a
than
passion thing, and like
no, not a passion thing. Just I guess as an 18, 20, 22-year-old guy, you think, oh, that's going to be cool. I'm going to be the guy that says yes, you're not coming in.
What made you change this? Like, you were a borrower when you had the leisure business, and now you became a lender. That's because you learned from your past experience and you want to replicate it?
Absolutely. So when I was building the leisure business, the retail, the property, you know, I was doing it by borrowing money. And you know, I always say that borrowing money really is a skill that I learned, because you know you need to understand how does a lender think, you know, what do they want to lend you on, how can you present your case best to get the money, and I learned all that. I guess I learned the hard way, learned by doing it, and over the course of 5 or 6 years, I borrowed 40-50 million pounds.
True.
So it was a fantastic experience of A, learning how to borrow, and B, learning who most of the lenders in that game were. And I always felt that if I ever had any capital of my own to be able to lend, I liked that lending model, because I could see why they were making good money, and I could also see some things that I could do different to maybe make more money. And I actually started lending before I went bankrupt. Maybe a year or two before, a friend of mine sold his business. He had some capital available, and he agreed to invest in a lending business with me. So I actually did start lending before the bankruptcy. But then when I went bankrupt, that went with everything else. But when I started after the bankruptcy, I just decided to concentrate on the lending full time, because I needed something that could be quick and transactional and get me paid again.
True.
And initially I wasn't lending, I was broking. I was advising other borrowers, matching borrowers with lenders, and that's what I did to get paid, put some money on the table, and then over time I got a new investor, so that let me lend some money.
The pool is bigger.
Then another one, and really for the last 15 years now, I spend 50% of my time building relationships with.
But how do you navigate the complexity of, I would say, meeting high net worth individuals and kind of convince them to invest or to lend money? It's a complex actual operation.
So, I mean, I guess the quick answer is, when you're meeting a high net worth individual, obviously by definition they're high net worth, they've got money that they want to do something with. And now whether or not they want to give it to you is a different question, but they've got money and they want to do something with it.
True.
So it's a matter of, first of all, identifying high net worths, then breaking down that they are high net worths who may have an appetite to do to invest in the kind of thing that you want to take investment for. And then the third most important bit is to present it in a manner that, I guess, answers all their questions, that shows it's structured properly, that shows it's thought out properly. I see so many people trying to raise money and failing it because they don't really know what they're doing. A big mistake a lot of people make is to confuse the fact that somebody has a lot of money and somebody wants to spend that money.
True.
And I was doing a run with a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about this, and he was telling me about a high net worth guy with tens and tens of millions that he'd been working on very hard for a long time to get money out of. And he was saying that when he talks all the right things, but then when it comes to it, he doesn't actually do anything. And so ultimately, you've got to separate the fact that somebody has money and somebody invests in things.
True.
And the naive person always goes, "Oh, he's got whatever 100 million. He'll throw 500k at that."
That's the naive. Correct.
Well, no, he won't, because the reason he's got 100 million is because he doesn't throw 500k at things that he doesn't want to do. So you've got to niche down. So obviously you have to start with a big pool of people who've got money. Then you have to find people who have the appetite to have a bit of risk, because some people don't want to take any risk whatsoever. And all they're going to invest in is long-term simple bonds or whatever, because they don't want to think about making money. They just want to live their life. So you need to find the people who want to get involved, who want to invest in businesses, and then, like I say, you have to present your business to them in a way that is easy for them to invest in. So when I go to an investor, I have a very clear product, a product that looks like this, that shows how you're going to get from A to B to C, that has a legal structure that works for them, a tax structure that works for them, that explains very much what the downside is and how we protect about the downside. That doesn't, sometimes you can't protect against the downside, but you just have, that has to be something that is identified and answered.
I love that. But in this type of business, what kind of guarantees that you give the investors?
So if we're talking specifically about me,
for example,
so the guarantee with our product is that when we lend to a borrower, we are taking security over an asset.
Oh, okay.
So if the borrower doesn't pay us back, then we have an asset that we can go after and take that back to recover our money. Now, okay, it doesn't mean it's going to happen quickly tomorrow. It might take 6, 9, 12 months, but we have something we can go after. So my investors' security is that they get to attach onto my security. So ultimately, if the borrower pays back, then they get the money because it pays back from the borrower. If the borrower doesn't pay back, then we go and take the property. And that goes to the investor.
Can you just give us a couple of understanding about the rates for borrowing? And you're doing all this business back in UK, am I correct?
So we only lend in the UK, but we raise money all around the world. And the reason I only lend in the UK is because I understand it inside out. People always say to me, I always get offered a deal, lend on this in Dubai, lend on this in Germany. And it's not that I think they're bad deals, but I don't know any of the players. I don't know any of the legal system. I don't know any of the structure. And there's so many things that can go wrong. And again, people go, oh, well, I've got a lawyer, he takes care of that. That's like saying, I've got a doctor, I'm never going to get sick,
True.
So, and like we said at the beginning, that you don't learn anything until things go wrong. Even when you lend and you take security and you have lawyers, things go wrong, you still cannot get paid, it can still go on for a long time. And I've been through all that pain. So I know how to structure things for the minimal amount of risk. So I just don't need to deviate from England. But we raise the money around the world because ultimately it doesn't matter where the money comes from. And our international investors like the UK because it's got a very clear regulatory structure. It's got a very precedented legal system. It's safe.
What is the borrowing rate in general?
So, I mean, there's no rocket science to what we do. We typically pay our investors anywhere between 10 and 12% per annum, depending on what they're investing in. Is it for 1 year? Is it for 2 years? But typically that kind of level. And we lend to our borrowers at 18 to 21, 22%. So we have a spread in the middle, but for that spread we do everything. We find the deals, we underwrite the deals, we originate them, we package them, we deal with the lawyers, we pay them out, and then we monitor them, because again, it's not just as simple as putting the money out the door. It's very easy to lend money. It's a little more difficult to collect it.
Yes.
And
any issues happen?
Issues happen all the time.
And how do you manage that?
And again, a lot of times we'll talk to an investor and they say, well, you're paying me 12%, but I can go and make a direct loan myself, and I can go and get the 18%. I'm like, go try it. Go try it. Because, like you say, so many things go wrong, and we've got hundreds of loans out there all the time. So for every one that's not paying, 20 are paying. If you've gone and made just one single loan and he doesn't pay, then you've got a big hole in your cash flow. But when you say what goes wrong, people can't pay. People don't want to pay. People's attitude when they're trying to borrow money is always very different to how they're paying it. And I tell you, and it's funny because it sounds very callous or thoughtless to say it, but until you've been a lender, you'll never appreciate it. But I've never known anyone who owes us money that they can't pay who hasn't had a death in the family.
Who?
I mean, every single time we're chasing money. Oh sorry.
My ex-ex
my dad's just died. I've got mental health.
The excuse that goes.
It's COVID. I mean, honestly, the excuses are incredible.
Sorry to hear that, but where's the money?
Yeah, and you just have to harden yourself to it. And listen, and we're not. I mean, there's different kinds of lenders. Look, we're not a predatory lender. We don't want the deal to go wrong. I mean, like a lot of the, some lenders out there, they want the deal to go wrong because they want to penalise you. They want to take the property off you. That isn't us, but we do need our money back. And I mean, I remember I recently got a message on LinkedIn from a borrower. She's obviously tracked me down, this borrower, and we lent them money, and they've been a nightmare from day one. I mean, literally, they barely ever made a payment. Wow. So many stories, so much bullshit. This loan's should have been repaid a year ago, and we're now, we've only made about 3 payments in 24 months. So my office, enough was enough. They're kicking it legal, and I got this long email from her, basically saying, I want you to I want you to write the loan off because we've suffered in COVID. My husband's very ill, and if you call this loan in, we're going to lose our house. So I'd like you to write the loan off. I'm summarising the thing. And I wrote back to her very polite to say, listen, I'm not trying to be horrible to you here, but first of all, don't talk to me about COVID because you borrowed the money after after COVID. And secondly, as much as I don't want you to lose your house, if I let you write the money off, then I'm going to lose my house.
True.
And it's not fun, it's not nice, but we borrow money, we have an obligation to our investors, we lend it to you.
And I love the idea, just write it off. Just write it off. But do you lend to individuals or companies? No. Only companies?
No, well, technically we can lend to an individual, but we only lend for business purposes. And again, there's 2 reasons for that. One, from a regulation perspective in the UK, we're only regulated to be able to do business loans. But secondly, I don't really like the principle of lending to an individual, because when you lend to a business, you're lending for a positive reason with a business that's got lots of different ways to pay you back and some security if it goes wrong. When you're lending to an individual, the only way they can pay you back is from their salary that they get. And if they then don't get paid that salary, then
there's nothing to hold.
And then it's a completely different game. I'm not saying it's a bad model. It's just not my model.
A question: what kind of advice would you give to borrowers who want to borrow money? What kind of advice? Like, you see the mistakes that borrowers do. What can be your advice for them?
That you need to understand that borrowing money is a job in itself. And yes, well, you can either hire the services of a professional, a kind of a finance broker to work with you and help you package your business up and go to lenders. But like any professionals, there's good ones and there's bad ones, and most of those brokers out there won't help you in any way other than costing you a commission, because they don't actually do any work. But my advice to anyone really is to do it yourself, to go and learn who are the lenders in the market, what are they looking for, how can you package your business up and take it to them and present it in the best possible light. And whilst I'm not saying you only get one bite of the cherry, yes, you could give some crap information to a lender, and they might then ask you some more questions so that you can get them better information. But if you arrive at that lender saying, hey, Mr. X, I know you like to lend to microphone businesses, and I know you only lend with property involved. That's why I've brought you my business. This is my microphone business. This is my property. This is my accounts for the last 3 years. This is my bank statements. This is my projections. This is why I want the money. This is how I'm going to pay it back to you, and this is what you can do to me,
guaranteed in case
if it goes wrong. Basically do that lender's job for them. And I'm a big believer in having as wide a pipeline as possible, as wide a net. So when you go to one lender, unless it's that perfect opportunity for that perfect lender, you're going to be very disappointed. So you need to go and find as many lenders as possible, as many opportunities as possible. So that's number one. And number two, never underestimate the importance of your personal credit as well. And this is something people always hate to hear, because they say, well, this is a loan for my business, why does my personal credit matter? And the real reason it matters is because small businesses, a business owner and the business are normally one and the same. They're normally very, very intertwined. So how you behave as an individual reflects on probably on how the business is. So if your personal credit shows that your credit cards are all max, that you're bouncing payments and things, and people often go, oh yeah, but I've never I don't owe anyone any money. Okay, you might not owe, but you always miss the payment on the second. And they go, yeah, but I make it up on the third. Every time I make it on the third. Okay, you do, but it just shows you're disorganized.
True.
And that, you know, and at best you're disorganized. At worst, that's the beginning of a problem. So get your house in order.
The personal, I love that actually. It's a very nice one, because usually the personal, I would say personal behavior reflects on the business as well. So you check this for the borrowers as well.
Absolutely.
100%. So Matt, what brings you to Dubai? So if the business is all in UK, what brings you to Dubai?
Well, I came to Dubai just for a holiday. I mean, the fact I'm here is a complete accident. You know, I came for an 8-day holiday during COVID, and like many COVID refugees, you know, I never went back. And you know, it's funny because whilst it was an accident that I came here, and I'd never even been to Dubai before, staying here now in hindsight has been a fantastic business move, you know, business opportunity. Like I said, in the beginning, it was nothing more than, well, England's on lockdown, so what's the point of me going back? I mean, I did plan on going back to England. You know, I'd done 8 days and I did another week and another week, and I thought there's going to become a point when I do go back to England. But England was on lockdown for so long that I became 3 months in, 4 months in, and I got so used to, I guess, not being in England, it was easier to stay on here. But now, I guess now I am here, the benefits of being in Dubai, I mean, I always say that I feel like I do Dubai's PR for it, but you know, the business climate here is just unbelievable.
In terms,
and okay, yes,
in your type of business, actually.
Well, it's certainly in my type of business because you know it's a great climate to raise money in. You know, it's a lot less regulated than the UK, and both financial advisors and individual high net worth and investors have a much greater appetite to want to invest, to want to do business than they do in the UK. But I think just people in general, it doesn't really matter what business you're in here, there's just a fantastic open attitude for growth, for entrepreneurship, for helping each other, you know, for meeting other people.
True.
You know, look, it's clean, it's safe, but it's just, and one thing I like as well here is, you know, what I hate in England is whenever anyone's got a little bit of money, they just behave like such a total dick. But because there's so much money in Dubai,
exactly,
I think it's like a real leveler because it doesn't matter how much money you've got here.
True.
Everybody's got more than you. You know, you think you've got 100 mil, means fuck all, right? And you know, you think you've got a 200-meter boat. Look at that 250. And I'm not saying there aren't any dicks, but I mean, I'm really yet to find them. Whereas in England, you know, when people have got a bit of money, they've got a bit of success. They're very conceited. They're very arrogant. But no, I think you just get such a friendly, helpful.
You told me before we start shooting that you stay in Dubai more than you stay in England.
Yeah, I mean, I left England 3 or 4 years ago. Properly, you know, I gave up my residency there. My residency's here. This is my tax base. And to I mean, listen, my business will always be in England. I've spent so long learning the market, the infrastructure, the players, that I don't want to go and do. You know, I've got 25 years history. I don't want to go and do that again somewhere else. But I think, you know, for all my criticisms of England, I also do think it's a great climate to do business in. But you know, if it wasn't for my daughter, I've got a 17-year-old daughter there. I probably wouldn't even go back for the 60 days that, you know, that I go back for. So at the minute, I split my time between Dubai and Spain mainly, with a little England. And people will say, well, you know, what if you get bored of Dubai? Well, if I get bored, I'll go somewhere else. You know, I mean, I think people completely overcomplicate the concept of moving. You know, I came here with 4 suitcases. And I'll leave with 6 suitcases. You know, it's not very difficult.
We talked about being an entrepreneur, right? Do you think, from your perspective, anyone can be an entrepreneur or not? Or it's a DNA or?
So, you know, well, there's probably two avenues we could take this question down. I mean, I think most things in life can be learnt. It's just to what degree they can be learned. You know, can you learn to play football? Can you learn to play basketball? Absolutely, you can. Can you be David Beckham? Can you be Michael Jordan? Probably not. You know, there's got to be some natural born talent, which is finessed, and I think that's the same with being an entrepreneur. But I think what's probably a more interesting way to take this question is to actually look at the word entrepreneur itself. And I have a document that I sit down with every time I take a new member of staff on, I have a 15-20 page document which is all my values for the organisation.
Boarding people in.
Yeah, like an onboarding document that says, you know, we are bum, bum, bum. And I break it all down. And one of the first things, well, actually, the first thing the document always says is, we're here to make money, which I think is a very important thing, but particularly in today's woke world. You know, so many other bullshit things are put in there. I think ultimately we're running a business. If we don't make money,
It's done.
it's done. Now, that's not to say we're going to make money at the expense of everything, but we have to make money. So
True.
please do remember that. But then second or third, I go on to say we are entrepreneurial. And because I think the quality of being an entrepreneur is something that can be applied to anybody. You know, we think of it only as the CEO, as a founder of the person building that business, but I say that everybody in their own little box,
True.
you know, can behave in an entrepreneurial fashion. You know, someone who takes risks, someone who wants to create something. You know, so and I tell all my staff that I want you to think in that way. Whether you're the receptionist, whether you're the marketing manager, you know, the finance director, whatever, you know, we can all behave in an entrepreneurial manner. Does that mean you can all run off and start your own businesses? Absolutely not. But you can all behave in a way that A, makes my business better, and B, grows you as an individual.
True. What are the skills do you think that I would say like youngsters or teenagers who wants to be entrepreneurs need to develop in themselves in order to be a real entrepreneur?
Well, I think nowadays, you know, the real thing people are lacking is work ethic and resilience. And I think, you know, the first thing you've got to understand, well, I always say to anyone starting a business, first, you've got to accept that you're probably going to fail, and secondly, you've got to understand that you know nothing. And I think what I always find irritating or funny in business is that when somebody, because the barrier to entry is very low, you know, I can wake up today and if I decide to start a business selling, you know, gold cheetahs or whatever, you know,
It's a tiger.
Tiger, my
Yeah.
gold tiger. I can start a company and say that I'm a gold tiger business owner. But what does that mean? I mean, all the other gold tiger business owners who've been doing it for 20 years more than me, you know, but because there's no scoreboard, because there's no playing field, and if it was football,
True.
if I said, oh, I'm going to start playing football tomorrow, nobody would ever think, and I certainly wouldn't think as an individual, that in the next few weeks I'm going to go and be able to play a game against Manchester United or something, because I know there's a very clear set of levels and experience and, you know,
True.
and learning I've got to do. But in business, because anyone can set up in business, you know, people who've been doing business for 2 days think that they have the same qualifications as Richard Branson and Elon Musk, and you know, so I think, you know, you've got to understand that you know nothing. You know, you've got to do as much learning, take on as many mentors as you possibly can. But you know,
Do you have mentors now, actually?
yeah, I do. You know, different. I think the key thing as well about mentors is to understand that different people can mentor you about different things, and you've got to be open-minded. So, for example, there's a person I know who's got a particular skill set in something, terrible with money, amazing with many other things. And some people go, well, why do I want him coaching me? Because he's never got any money. Well, you're not going to, you know, don't go to him for money management. You know,
relationship, for example.
Go to him, for whether it's relationship or mindset
Sports
or whatever it is. So I've got lots of different, you know, whether you want to call them, I think the word mentor's interchangeable with advisor, with expert, with whatever. You know, I've got many people that I would consider my mentors because they have far superior knowledge to me in each particular thing, whether that might be an SEO expert, whether that might be a podcast expert or whatever it is, you know, and I think, you know, the key is to have the humility to know that there's all these other people that know so much more about it than you, but my skill is that I guess I might not be great at anything, but I'm very good at lots of things.
True.
And I can pull it all together.
What was your biggest challenge that you remember to that day? It's the bankruptcy, or you passed it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it probably felt like the bankruptcy at the time. I mean, every day I've got some kind of challenge.
Because you know how you put bankruptcy on the table. It means like you absorbed it very well, you passed it very well, and is this the biggest challenge, or?
I mean, I think no matter how long I go in business, one of my biggest challenges is always making sure that there's enough money coming in. Whether that's we've got to sell more, whether that's that we've got to raise more investment. There's always key time. I mean, COVID was obviously a challenging time. I mean, we woke up in COVID. And every single borrower stopped paying. I mean, every single borrower stopped paying. Now, again, I could flap around and get my my knickers in a twist and say the world's over, the business is over. But the reality was the world can't stop forever. So something's going to have to happen. So I try and take a positive attitude, a realistic mindset to everything we do. The last year has been a bit of a tough year because. With the onset of an expected recession, or some would say with a recession, a lot of our investors may have had their own cash flow problems, so they've wanted some money back. So we're trying to give them their money back whilst raising new money, whilst continuing to lend money. So look, there's always challenges, but I think the key is to not get too caught up in any one of them. Not let the tail wag the dog, and we just have to have a plan. We have to have the right mindset. And also, I guess my job as a leader is to always be positive about it myself. That doesn't mean I should be jumping up and down, going, we everything's going to be cool. But I need to look like I'm in control, and I need to look like there's nothing to fear.
How do you balance your day? Like, as leading your business, you are more inclined or strategic to get more investors or the borrowers? How does business model work?
It's always a balance.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with one of my business partners recently over the last few days, because I've been having some fantastic meetings in Dubai lately. Some lunches, some dinners, going out seeing people who are going to be great for the business. But every time I'm spending a few hours in a meeting, it's a few hours I'm not doing some admin, I'm not writing a document, I'm not doing whatever. So it's a balance. It's hard to strike that balance. But the real answer is it's probably always impossible to balance. I just have to do what I'm best at, and there'll be some of those other jobs that probably someone else is better at. I just haven't found them yet. But I guess I'm better at sitting down with an investor. I'm better at having that meeting and getting some cash out of them. There'll be someone else who's better at writing a business plan, better at replying to the emails, better at doing whatever it is. So recruitment is always something that's very high on my priorities of things to do. It's also something that's very difficult to kind of recruit and retain the right people.
Your team is on grounds or they're all remote?
90% on the ground. I hate remote working. Absolutely hate it.
The same actually.
I just think it's hard. It's impossible to have the control. It's hard to
relationship building, managing the whole thing.
And team. And there's always, you can always make not an excuse, but you can always make exceptions. And some people and some roles will be fine at home. But some roles absolutely should never be at home, and other ones probably perform better in the office. So I'm not a fan of home working at all. And no, it's been hard. It's been a debate that I've had with my senior management over the last year or so, because they keep telling me, unless we allow more home working, unless we allow more hybrid, we're not going to be able to recruit the people we want to recruit. But I think it's a short-term problem. Yes, you're right. We are struggling to get the people, but if we start to allow them to work from home, I'm going to have to allow everybody else to work from home. And it's something that we can never unwind. And I do believe that over the next months and year plus, when the massive layoffs come, because they are coming, absolutely, at that point the power will come back to the employer and not the employee. And if you look at over the last 2 or 3 years, you've had to offer. The perks and the money you've had to offer employees has been insane. That is not going to go on forever.
True. Do you have any habits or rituals that you do every day that you contribute to what you're in today?
I have things that I like to do. I mean, I wouldn't say they're the reason I'm successful. There's just things I like to do. Go to the gym, absolutely massive about the gym. I play paddle, I do weights, I do boxing. Love saunas, love ice baths. I don't do them in a kind of a what's the word? Superstitious ritual kind of way. I just know that if I work out, I feel better. If I go in the sauna, I feel better. If I go in the ice bath, I feel better. But I guess ultimately, success comes from doing the work, not from freezing your ass off at 2 degrees.
Tell me, if we talk about your success, what will you contribute to your success? What skills or the mindset that you have?
I think always wanting to learn. You know, I probably wasn't so much when I was younger. I mean, I probably was an accidental learner back then. But in my older years, you know, I'm a very kind of aggressive learner.
Or hands-on learning.
But yeah, very hands-on. You know, I want to know as much as I can about every different thing. You know, there's not one single area of my business where, I'm not saying I can do the job better than the people in those positions, but there's not one single area where I don't know enough about that area to be able to have an intelligent conversation and to know that I'm not getting the wool pulled over my eyes. You know, my work ethic is excellent. You know, but one big thing is the networking. I mean, my network is fantastic, and it's something that I've spent my entire career
building it,
and I will continue to do for the rest of my life. You know, it's if I look at every single big deal I've done, if I look at every piece of major success I've had, it's all come from a transaction with an individual that I've built from a circumstance of networking.
If we stop at this networking, give people advice. How can they network? Because sometimes people take it wrong. Once you network, you ask. So how do you build?
Well, so two things. I think even before the asking bit, you know, for me, the big mistake people make with networking is not being focused. People hate networking because they're just used to walking into a convention center with a pocket full of business cards. Go, oh, hey, you know, I'm Matt. You know, do you want a computer system? Do you want a security guard? Whatever you're selling. All of my networking is very targeted. It's very focused. You know, I know exactly what I want to achieve, and then I go and find the people who can help me achieve that, and then I find a way to get in front of them, and then I start building a relationship. And you know, for me, the building the relationship is about giving, not receiving. Now, listen, let's not be naive here. That's not to say that, you know, if you're trying to build a relationship with someone to buy something from your company, of course you're going to have to ask at some point. But you've got to understand how to play the long game, how to add value and build that relationship. And other quick things for me are, you know, you should always keep building that relationship no matter how impossible something looks. And you know what, I'm only on a very small scale, but this, I was going to record a video about this today, but you get it as an exclusive here today. So I do on my boat, I do a networking dinner every Thursday night. And I've always used the same catering company.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're the best, I'm not saying they're the cheapest, but I'm happy with them. I'm loyal to them. Somebody I know rang me about 6 weeks ago and said, I now work for a catering company. Please, can we do your Thursday nights? And I said no. I said, nothing wrong with what you do, but I've got no issue with these guys, and you wouldn't like it if I kicked you out for them. So I said, but keep in touch with me. You never know what's around the corner.
Ethics as well. Please.
This Monday, just gone, I text the catering company. I said, dinner for 12 people on Thursday, please. He messaged me back this morning. He said, sorry, we're full. Give us more notice next time. I said, I always tell you on a Monday for a Thursday. He said, yeah, but we've got a lot on this week. I said, listen, somebody else has been pitching me. I said, I'm staying with you because I want to stay with you. But if you say no, you're going to let them get their foot in the door, and it's a very dangerous position to be in. He goes, I know what you're saying. Let me go and speak to my boss. And he comes back, he says, I'm sorry, I can't. So we then went to this other person, and they've now done the dinner. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to, not because I'm like, hate this guy for cancelling on me, but if this dinner's good on Thursday, then it's very likely that I'm going to keep using that person. And I just thought for me, it was the perfect example of two things, two completely different areas really. But one, always play the long game. You know, if you're selling something to somebody who's in contract, you have to play the long game anyway. And even if someone's not in contract, if they say they're happy with somebody, things always, you know, something always goes wrong. You know, I'm happy with my caterer. They haven't served me a bad chicken. They're just busy. And if you don't, you know, so if you don't don't
be short-sighted.
You know, so play the long game. But then secondly, from the business owner's perspective, do everything possible to keep that customer happy, because there will be hungry people out there doing anything possible to get through the door. And when you open that door with a little crack,
love this example.
Someone's putting a big foot through.
True. Do you have a hidden talent or skill that nobody knows? Nobody knows, and you didn't do a video on it, and you didn't do a podcast.
Not hidden. I don't know. I don't think I've got any hidden talents. I think my unhidden talent is I'm just very good at building relationships.
You keep building it, and you stay in Dubai. You keep building,
absolutely,
but with an objective, with a goal.
Well, look, my goal is the growth of my businesses and the betterment of myself. But when I build the relationships with people, I do build them, most of them with no specific agenda. I just want to build relationships with great people because something good must happen, whether that's business or whether that's just hanging out with great people that teach me something that then introduce me to somebody else. It can never hurt to be surrounded by great people.
I love that. Let's say like somebody wants to get in touch with you now, either an investor or a borrower. How they get in touch?
Listen, I'm very active on social. I'm all over the internet, very easy to find. I am at the Matt Haycox. That's TheMattHaycox on all things social. I've got a website, Matt Haycox. Just Google it. I've got a podcast. I've got a newsletter. You'll find me online and just get in touch because I communicate with everybody. If it's a genuine business inquiry, my team will look after it. If people send me messages online, ask me questions, ask me advice, I always respond. So please reach out.
Super. What will be your last message you want to leave the audience with today?
My last message to the audience today would be never give up. I could have picked many things, but I think we've talked about the bankruptcy a few times, and if I'd have listened to other people back in 2008, these were professional people who should know what they're talking about. They all said to me, "Your life's over. You'll never work again. You'll never have any credibility. You'll never have any respectability again." If I'd have listened to them, I'd be, who knows what I'd be doing, packing boxes in a warehouse now. But learn skills, believe in yourself, and never give up.
Love that. We have a ritual here before we end the episode.
You're going to make me get in the ice bath here.
With the tiger,
the cheetah.
It's called the Alpha Talks Memoir. The Alpha Talks Memoir has 3 things that you will write after the show. Is what's your experience in the Alpha Talks? The second is a question that you will write to the next guest. It's a way of connecting Alpha guests together. And the third one is who do you recommend to be the next Alpha guest that will add value to the show? So before ending...
So what was the question that the last guest
Exactly.
Oh, you've not asked me it yet?
I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
The previous guest didn't answer this question, so I want you to answer me this. So give me, please, 3 things that you didn't like in your host safe.
In my what? Oh,
3 things
I didn't
like
about you. There's nothing. There's not in the hour that we've known each other. I've been very impressed with your questioning, your delivery.
I appreciate it, Matt.
Else.
Matt, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we're going to do another episode soon, and we'll be meeting much more in the future. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you.
That wraps another inspiring episode of today's show. I hope that this episode has ignited your inner alpha and left you feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to conquer any challenge that comes your way. Remember, alphas aren't born, they're made. It isn't about dominating others, it's about embracing your authenticity, leading with integrity, and making a positive impact on the world. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the Alpha Talks on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a review and share the podcast with your fellow alphas. Also connect with us on social media at Saif Al Hakim. Share your thoughts, insight, and stories of personal and business growth with us. Let's create a movement of alphas supporting one another. The world needs more alphas like you exactly. Until next time, stay bold, stay driven, and stay alpha.